Onda, onda, onda. All right, welcome to the Duh podcast. We have a lot to talk about today. Today we have a very special guest, Valentino Lopez. Valentino comes from a interesting background. He grew up in inner cities, New York and Miami. He currently lives in Arizona, working for Google. Grew up with mostly Democratic leftist views, and recently has a lot to say about identity politics and the way the left is going. Without further preamble, Mr. Valentino Lopez, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Val, thanks for coming on.
Hey, no, thanks for having me, guys. I really do appreciate it. Basically kind of going over what you said. Yeah, grew up in Miami and New York, and just kind of had an interesting perspective on like what is identity politics today, and kind of maybe hopefully bust some theories with you guys and have some great discussions going on that.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's get into it then. I'm excited to see what you have to say. I know a lot of controversy around identity politics today, especially when you being a black man in America, right, and growing up that kind of culture. There's a lot of I know the number one thing that you want to debunk right off the bat is that the black man is oppressed. Right. And I'll let you kind of take it from there. What are your thoughts around that?
If you gave your kid every single reason like why they did something wrong, you're just going to enable your child, right? Eventually. So what we have here is kind of a culture identity of just enabling. Oh no, you're not successful because you didn't have a dad, or you're not successful because you didn't this percentage of you doesn't do it, or you're not successful because essentially of your skin color, people pay minorities less or don't give that to. So what you're doing is you're enabling an entire culture, essentially saying, no, it's okay that you're not successful. It's other people's faults. And therefore that's the easier path versus, actually thinking like, whoa, what am I doing not to get ahead in life too? So I think that's kind of the number one thing that I hate the most about it. About the left is it just enablers, a whole field of enabling.
Yeah, Val, tell us a little bit about growing up. Where'd you grow up and what was it like?
Okay, so I grew up in, I was born in New York for a couple of years and I lived in Miami. I went to a high school where English was the minority language. So it was 33% Creole, 33% Hispanic, 10% miscellaneous, and then English as well too. So very, very diverse. And also grew up too as well in the neighborhood. I guess I was the odd person out in all the factions of people that I hang out with and everything like that too. I like theater and stuff like that too. So maybe I'm a little weird, but no, I mean, I got a full chance to see essentially cultures of all kinds of white, black, Hispanic. And really kind of see there's really not much difference in each culture itself. Just depends on the circumstances. But yeah, no, very diverse growing up. Also went to a art school too as well in high school, middle of high school.
Oh, nice. What got you doing? What got you into art? What was your medium? What did you get into?
Well, I wasn't very athletic, and my mom said, well, you have to do something after school. So she's like, well, you watch movies all the time. Why don't you think of doing it in theater? So she got me enlisted in 7th grade. I loved it. And then I became very passionate about it. It was a good form of expression, like a lot of things that you feel inside. It's a great way to vent, and just like any activity for a youth too. So that was my stage where I shined the most and learned how to be creative and pretty adaptable in almost any situation too. So I credit my mom for that a lot.
Nice. Just to bring it back to some more controversial stuff.
Of course.
Hey, theater's pretty controversial.
Well,
we're all homosexuals.
On previous podcasts, one thing that Mike and I have been very interested in was the the Milo Yiannopoulos event at Berkeley, and I just coming from your background, I'm curious if you know. Do you know who Milo Yiannopoulos is?
I think I've heard of him once or twice. Yes, correct. I do.
I'm gonna
I
take
do
that
know
as
of Milo.
sarcasm.
Yes, yes.
What do you when people call him a white supremacist, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm just curious, coming from from your background and culture, what do you think about that? And it's mostly white people calling him that, I believe.
That's the irony of all that too, right? I would. I mean, the first thing I always ask when someone says like, "What do you think of that person?" or like that person's a blank, I would say, well, okay, what specifically did he say? Make that like, oh, he promoted this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, but like, what specifically did he mention that made you come up for fascist? Because I mean, we don't personally know him. He's an entertainer and a clown in a lot of ways, and he says a lot of controversial shit. But you listen to a lot of hours of him, and I've never heard him quite say one thing that was fascist-like. He's very anti-Muslim, but he has a fight to it because to him, he's oppressed by the Muslim culture. So I mean, to him, he's a freedom fighter in his own right. But I would never say anything they said was fascist. So it's just really stupid. And then I would say, as far as the white doing it, would it be like maybe white guilt more than anything, or just people trying to get laid in college? One of the two. I would have to guess the reason why.
So talk about that white guilt. I'm curious what you have to say about that.
I don't know when it happened or the movement it did, but if you guys look back early, like in the during the civil rights movement, a lot of people were thinking of like, I need to have my own. We need to help our own and not get any outside help. So Malcolm X is really big on I'm sorry if I lost you guys. Malcolm X is really big on only having Muslims help Muslims progress forward. And then somewhere along the way, we started accepting help. And I think what essentially happened is through political movements, I guess, essentially it became okay, or the right thing to do is if you can't do something directly to help, it's okay to feel guilty about it. So therefore, if you're not going to do anything to help civil rights causes, the best thing to do is just make other people feel bad about themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know when exactly it happened. I mean, this has to be within the last 10 years, right? I mean, we're all about the same age. Like, I can't recall, maybe I wasn't paying that much attention in my early 20s, but I can't recall anything quite like this much guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny.
Well, go ahead, Tommy.
Right,
go ahead.
right.
Well, I was just saying, Mike, you actually had a similar theory to that as far as like why so many people are anti-Trump was because they didn't want to vote for the next Hitler.
Right.
They don't want to be on the wrong side of history.
Yeah. Like I was just calling it the wrong side of history effect, where just anyone insinuating that Trump could be the next Hitler or that it's a fascist regime. It's not so much that they're against what Trump's policies were going to be, but that they just don't want to be read about in the history books as having been complicit in it.
I see. So, like, idly standing by while they did nothing. Like,
Yeah.
you think there's it'd be an interesting thing to ask is that there's a lot of German guilt, like, towards Jewish people. Like, I've never done anything. Like, do Germans over defend Jewish people now? Do you think they're like, no, he sits here and I
Yeah. Well, there are Holocaust.
A lot of that going.
Yeah, there are Holocaust denial laws in Germany. It's illegal to deny the Holocaust happened.
Wait, so you have to? So that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, what's the penalty of saying like I don't think that exactly happened that way? Like, is it death?
I don't. It's not that extreme, but it is a law. It's crazy.
That is interesting. Holy crap, too. So I thought it was, it would be interesting to see if this kind of problem is more nationwide or just diverse in America. I think in America specifically because, I mean, we do have. Freedom to say and platforms to say whatever we want as long as you agree with us.
Right.
That's, the left agenda with that. But I wonder if that's a problem nationwide.
Yeah.
Like, if you have that would be interesting research to see.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. Well, because if we're talking about Germany, they actually have legal consequences, but I think what we see more here in the United States is, Andrew Breitbart, who started Breitbart and died a few years ago, but he called this like cultural Marxism, where in the United States you're not, it might be this kind of behavior might be seen in other cultures, but here it's not illegal. It's the First Amendment protects a lot of speech, but that if you step out of line or you say something that could be construed as any form of bigotry, that it's you pay a price because of the culture that this Marxist culture, not so much that it's in the laws, but that it's like you're kind of ostracized from society. What do you think? What would you say about that?
Well, here's the thing, right? So with any type of movement, it always starts at a noble cause, I would say. So I would say, like, we could all argue, right, that some of these movements, civil rights movements, women's rights movements, all that stuff like that, it needed to happen, correct? And you had to fight for every single thing that you ever got it. The problem is, and directly quoting Milo, he said, what's really interesting is when you give people who have no power and all of a sudden give them power and see how they react. So the culture of it is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a culture, more as a power grab. And it sounds weird to say a power grab, but like power as in like young people more than anything want to do what? They want to change the world, right? That's every 19 to 22. I want to make my mark on life. So I feel like by them actually feeling like they made a difference, albeit how retarded or stupid it is, they feel in some way that they've made a difference. And that's kind of what I guess brings that culture when they look back. Yeah, we're the generation that made it okay for transgenders to, whatever controversy there is now, transgenders to also be Muslim or whatever the fucking case we have indeed. So, so I would say kind of it's more of a power thing than a culture thing. Just the culture the youth drive the culture, and the youth want power now more than ever, and they have more power than ever with platforms of Twitter, social media. I mean, essentially they can ruin, almost anybody, just a mob of people, and because money rules all. So if you get enough people hating you, sponsors get pulled, and so the youth more than ever rule the country.
I completely agree with that, Val. And it's funny, Mike and I were talking about this in the last episode. Is my stance was, if the biggest, like a lot of these Antifa and these protesters, youthful protesters out there just protesting everything, the majority of the narrative is about racism, bigotry, homophobe, right? And if you go against these protesters or even engage them and say, okay, let's discuss, I'm curious to know what your positions are on certain policies. What policies do you disagree with?
You're homophobic.
Right.
Shut them down.
It's out of control.
Exactly.
And I, my stance was that a lot of these guys don't, it's just the cool thing to do. It's really just the fun, trendy thing to do is get out there and yell racism at everybody.
What also is the extra annoying part is they align themselves with people that actually did suffer and were heroes. Like, oh, we're doing this in the name of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm like,
Are you?
Like, let's slow down there. The man took a fire hose straight to his face and took a rock that hit him bleeding and still had his hands up. He didn't yell at anybody. So let's calm yourself before you unite yourself too. So yeah, it's that's the reason why I tell you perception is more powerful than truth, Tom. We spoke about that off record. If you can perceive somebody as a racist and a homophobe, it almost doesn't matter what the facts say. It's like have someone who you hate try to reason you down. You're not hearing anything you say. You just see red. And I essentially think once people paint that, and we have a mob mentality. If someone has, like, if I think of Milo as a fascist, because when I first heard from Milo was from my uncle. It's like, can you believe this fucking guy? Oh my God. And like the first thing I heard were kind of hateful things. I'm like, oh man, he's kind of a dick. I didn't hear anything fascist. And then it took my own independent research to really realize what he actually stood for. A, he's an entertainer more than anything else, so you shouldn't take anything he says seriously. B, there's really nothing that he actually says that's super fascist. I don't agree with all of his Muslim stances, and I think he can be mean and petty, but like there's nothing really fascist about it. So it took me doing extra work to really say, okay, he's not that, but my first perception of him was a negative one. So if I never did the independent research on it, I would still have that negative perception. I think that's the problem too, is like none of us, it's easier to just give the information of what your neighbor is telling you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, fuck this guy. I'm like, oh, why fuck this guy? Like if I never care to look for the information, every time I see him, I'm like, oh yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And
yeah.
that's kind of how it ends up being like that.
And I'm not sure if it's intellectual laziness or if it's just that people don't have the time to dedicate to it, or they don't care.
People have the time. It's intellectual laziness, or it's cooler. People like it's easier to agree with someone than disagree. You know, like when talking, like even like if we talk race with somebody too, you know, like the talks themselves are uncomfortable, but they're meant to be uncomfortable. I want uncomfortable talks about it, like true uncomfortable talks, not like this guy's this guy's this guy's this. Like, okay, but like let's really discuss it and really figure out why. But that takes work, intellect, and most importantly, it takes someone saying that they're wrong or I didn't think of it that way. And people always love their own data more than any other data they'll ever get.
No, you're right. You know what my favorite argument is when talking identity politics with everybody is after I state my case, they just kind of laugh and say, "Ha, says the white guy." Like you know anything.
But like, I mean, think about it. It is easier rather than saying like, because like here's the small secret that you guys already know. The world's not fair, right? Everyone starts on different levels of not education, but well, the parents do different levels of education, economic situations, culture, stuff like that too. All right, everyone's getting a hand. Some people get pocket aces. Some people get a 2-7 offsuit. But I mean, until you get your hand, the rest of your hand. That's when you can really kind of devise of what, you do with the cards that you're dealt with. It sounds super cliche, but it would be easier to say, oh, no, that guy got pocket aces. I got 2-7. Therefore, he's better off than me, and I have to do nothing. I don't have to read him. I don't have to chat. I'm not going to do any work because he has pocket aces, and he's already better than me. I might as well just fold. It's way easier to fold. Even you know what I mean?
This culture war is actually just a giant poker game.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Since you guys are both white, you got ace king suited. Since I'm black with a Spanish name, what did I get? I think I just got just the 3. I have no dad. So I grew up without a father, so I have just the 3, and I'm big blind, and I'm all in, but I have no chips going in, so I have to pawn my shoes or whatever. But you guys, so yeah, that's. According to that, yes, that's where I'd be at. Have one card. Tom, you have both your mom. You grew up with both your mom and dad, correct?
Yes.
You get an ace. Okay, and then also, let's say you're also white as well, correct?
Uh-huh.
You get an ace. Did your father have a college degree? And yes. And you get another ace. And let's see here. What else would there be? Let's see. Did you go to college? Did you get your college paid for as well?
Yes.
You get an ace. So you start your hand out. This is according to everyone else. Just for those circumstances outside of your own, you get 4 aces. Congratulations. Good for you. Now let's do the same opposite for me. Val, are you black? Ooh, you get a 2. Let's see. No father. Ooh, no card for you. Where'd you grow up in? Miami? One of the worst education places? Ooh, you also get no card. And so like, do you see kind of what it is? But like, here we are. I mean, socially equals today, but I would have every excuse to say, like, no, you had a better hand than me. Therefore, that's why you're where I'm at now. And I think we could both agree there are things that I'm better at than you, and there's things you're as far as you would be.
I see what you're saying. So if I'm like the far left liberal who points these things out and says, look, he doesn't have the ace, he has a bad hand.
Correct.
Yeah, it's only going to make it worse.
And that's why I'm at circumstances. That's why I'm throwing glasses at through Berkeley or whatever the case is. That's why he's troubled.
Yeah.
But talk more about, like, I mean, you think it's better if these things aren't pointed out, right? And if like the welfare state.
Oh wait, sorry, I think I misunderstood the question. What'd you ask?
Well, if we don't bring these things up, right, the fact that you have less cars per se, then you think the black community would be better off?
Yeah, that's tricky, right? Like, I think a lot of people like doing the whole heroing. Oh, he did it despite the odds, So that's kind of the eye roll thing that we get in a lot of people, like especially like in football specifically. They're like, oh, this kid, picked himself up and ran himself way to a scholarship and stuff like that. And he got every opportunity to lose. Like, come on, give me a break. The dude was 6'8", athletically gifted, and like one of the top 10% best athletes in the world. Yes, sure. Yeah, he had to struggle to get there. Yeah. So I mean, like the culture itself likes to heroize itself rather than and like speak outside of the norm, rather than I think the norm should be like, oh yeah, like, oh, he got a college degree. Okay, good for him. So I guess I agree with you in that aspect of not heroizing every defying the odds situation. I mean, yeah, sure, there's odds, but everyone has odds. And so, but I don't know if that's directly through. If I had to pick the number one problem with the Black community, it would have to be education by far. Like, because that's really the only thing you can really look at that's like statistically lower across the board in every way. SAT scores, attendance, dropouts, all that. Statistically, the Blacks have the highest rate in that. So, and coincidentally, also have the most crimes. So that can't be a coincidence. I don't think I answered your question though.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So let's start here, because I know you're a fan of I think everybody on here is a fan of Thomas Sowell. Am I saying his name right? Sowell?
Yeah, Soul.
Thomas Sowell. Yeah, Soul.
Soul. Sorry, Mr. Soul. So he argues that that things like welfare and specific Black minority charity and minimum wage, is only makes it worse for the Black community, and he shows this through obviously tons of factual statistics. And so, do you think that, like, I guess my original question relates somewhat to that when I say that, do you think that if the culture warriors, the social justice warriors, the rich hipster, white kids stop talking about how the Black community is oppressed, then it would actually help the Black community if they were to stop? Would you agree with that?
I mean, I don't know if specifically them doing that, because I feel like if it's not them, then they'll enable themselves. You know what I mean? Too. It specifically has to be the government more than anything else to stop kind of doing these things. I would.
So stop what? What do you think the government should stop doing?
Less participation in people's daily lives. So specifically, as we know, welfare doesn't work, right? And the best amount of evidence that we've seen in any culture with any type of assisted living, in that if unemployment inexplicably drops, and crime increasingly increases on places that do have it. And Thomas Sowell directly said that there's a reason why when other people migrate to this culture, migrate to America, illegals and aliens, stuff like that too, they actually tend to thrive the first two generations because they have no choice but to work. They're out there hustling, grinding, do whatever they have to do. So they actually thrive. And then it's 2 or 3 generations down, they start seeing the decline too, because that's when that generation starts getting assisted living. So, I mean, like, there's a direct correlation that it just does not help at all. And it just enables. That's all it is. It's just simply enabling too. Now, there can be special circumstances, obviously, like, workman's comp. If someone can't work. But specifically, like, welfare seems like there's no evidence that it's ever helped any save or form except get people votes, essentially.
I think culturally, a lot of what's said is that, welfare is a form of reparations because of what's happened in the past. That it's, the Black community is getting, these, and it's actually shown statistically that actually more white people are on welfare than Black people, but
correct.
So what do you say to the person who says that you've kind of touched on it already about this sort of enabling victimhood culture, but what do you say to someone who says but that's just the way it is historically? Minorities were have always been oppressed, and 150 years ago, they weren't even considered real people. And so therefore, this culture, and these people deserve whatever they can get.
So what I would say is if they do, well, everyone, first of all, deserves to get what they can get. Like, that's stupid to say that one person deserves to get over. Just because I'm black in X amount of time of years ago doesn't mean I should get a better head start than you guys, right? Because, for whatever reason, that's stupid. You don't fight inequality with inequality. That's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. As far as like, oh, this is just to catch them up, you can probably turn it on them and say like, okay, so this person was raped. Does he now get to rape everyone for the rest of his life to make up for that one rape that he did? Like, no, that's stupid. No one would ever say that. It's ludicrous. So like the way you do that, instead of putting money into welfare, put it into something that is useful, which would be like education. Education is like, do you guys know how much money is paid through welfare each year? Anything like that? I'm sure it's a lot. So if we can do just better, and the problem is too, is the education has, oh God, that's its own department, because it's not enticing to be a teacher anymore. Yeah. Like, why would anyone want to do that? It's off. The schools are overpopulated. You got 50 kids, don't want to be there. The teachers are paid, $32,000 a year or something stupid like that. It's not enticing to be a teacher, too. So, but if you took something that has shown that hurts people and put in something that's been proven that helps, which anyone will say, any place that has prosperity, it's duly due to the education system. Yeah. If you look across the board at any culture, like Germany has a great education system, Japan has a great education system, and ironically, those people who live here, Germany and Japan, make about, I don't know what the last percentage is, but they make about 32% above the average income. Yeah. And that the common denominator is not that they're white or Japanese, because they would still technically not be American. It's their education. That's the one common denominator.
Yeah, and I don't want to send us down another rabbit hole, but I'm sure we've got a lot of, if anyone's listening that is a charter school proponent or of the belief that teachers' unions already have way too much money, and that adding money to the problem won't help. That's another side of it, is like, how do we attack education that doesn't even necessarily have to involve more money?
Let me ask you, maybe more money. But like, money rules all. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, money means worth. Like, if I'm going to a doctor, right, and one doctor charges me, let's say I have cancer. One doctor says I can do this for $200. One doctor says I can do it for $2,000. You're going to think the one for $2,000 is going to be the better one, no? Like, just logically, you would think that, right? Because essentially, you're paid what you're worth, or it should be you're paid what you're worth. And for some reason, teaching isn't just valued as what you're worth. So, I would ask anyone then, like, why, who says throwing more money at the problem is too? I'm like, okay, but like, what are you wearing? I see you wearing Nikes, and why not just wear regular shoes or wear stuff like that too? You pay for what you're worth, essentially. I don't know if I answered the question properly.
Yeah. No, you did. I think because Michael and I have talked about education in a different way too. And you can stop me if I'm really going off the rails here, but I think that education needs more of a reform in like how
like what is taught. You mean?
Well, like today, everybody has a smartphone, right? They have a computer in their pocket to give them all the facts in the world, right? So sitting there and being taught, how to memorizing facts, right?
It's stupid.
It's stupid, right? But when they should be learning like how to think. Right, how to critically think, how to challenge the facts with all this, fake news out there, and and you're not sure what to believe. How to question things and think for yourselves is really what I think education is in dire need of.
Well, think about this too, right? Let's say we made, just hypothetically, schools an elite program, right? Like, we just put all our funding in schools. We gave teachers, based on their, because teachers will do this too. Or schools will do this same thing as cops. They'll stack the numbers. You know what I mean? They'll like influence kind of grades and stuff like that too. Let's say that was out of the window. That there was no incentive for them to do that other than getting paid more, right? So let's say this teacher right here has a 95% graduation rate, so therefore he makes an extra $25,000 bonus, something like that too. Do you think that essentially, so we made teachers kind of an elite thing where they get over $100K a year, elite incentives to challenge children to do that? Would that solve the problem, or would we be creating brand new problems?
I just think that's impractical, and I mean,
you might see, just right off the top of my head, you might see some consequences of teachers pushing students to a place they don't want to go in terms of test scores. I don't.
That's my only thing too, because that's what we do now with the SATs now.
Right? Yeah, I guess.
Or the C crap. What are they called? Whatever they are for each school. Like they're teaching them specifically on to pass that test rather than any type of thing. So I'm saying take that incentive out of it altogether and just get real learning. What do we have? And then incentivize teachers to, I don't know how you would incentivize them, because by graduation rate would mean they would have to pass. You would influence that. So I'm probably thinking of the wrong way to say it, but there has to be a way to entice people to value education more rather than valuing the stats.
Yeah, and I think there's two sides of this incentivization. Incentivization, is that a word?
I think so. It just became one.
Well, yeah. You just witnessed the birth of a new word. Because there's the carrot and the stick too. Because a lot of people say problems with public school teachers is it's impossible for them to get fired no matter what their performance is, and so that if you privatize more schools and you give maybe vouchers to parents, allow their kids to get a check from the government that would normally have gone to the school in their neighborhood, and at this point now they can pick and choose what school they can go to. Mm-hmm. So that there's more pressure on these teachers to not
keep the student.
To keep the student, right, to keep the business, so that it becomes more of a free market system. But so like I said, I didn't want to send us down this rabbit hole fully.
Yeah, we did exactly what you did.
Because I think a lot of people maybe just kind of bring it back to the culture side of things, because a lot of people say some of that money should end up going to paying for people's 4-year colleges, and then that just drives me crazy. I mean, not of course I came from a background, my college was paid for. I probably took that for granted for a little while, and then now I'm at the point where I say, what the hell was I learning in school, and how it didn't at all prepare me for failure in the real world. It didn't prepare me for business in the real world. I'm not saying it wasn't valuable. I did learn a lot and had a journalism degree and helped a little bit, but I think one of the issues now with school, or at least in university, is I grew up kind of going back to this identity politics thing. I was going through school and I started to learn about like social justice and civil rights, and how it affected that, and multiculturalism, and then it started to get even like towards my junior and senior year, like learning about microaggressions. You know about microaggressions?
Yeah, yes, I do.
And so I was in this weird place where I wasn't sure if it was just me getting older and learning more now that I hadn't heard about microaggressions before, and now looking back, I realize it is it's a phenomenon that is just emerging in the past couple years, and so in terms.
Do you think that's direct correlation to social media? That it has to be, right?
I think so, because it was all the stuff I was learning through Facebook and Twitter. It wasn't. I mean, a lot of it was coming from the classroom, but I was getting these weird, like, almost just propaganda videos that I was buying into that had to do with this stuff. How do you see 4-year universities in relation to preparing you for the real world?
I think Tom would speak better to this, because me personally, as Tom knows, I actually don't have a college degree. And it's funny why, too, is because I actually don't value education. No, I'm saying it the wrong way. I value education dearly. I just don't think what the education I was sought for was being taught to me specifically in a university, if that makes sense, or even in school. You know what I mean? Like, so everything that I've known or have interest in, I'm kind of self-taught, and I feel like I could have easily been influenced into, if I let it, like what I feel like would have been okay for me to get a degree in and not truly be happy. And I still not regret not getting a degree. I do want to get one. but like I do want to get it under the terms of like what I want to find interesting or makes value sense to me. Not not to quote Ben Shapiro, but gender equality, liberal arts, dancing, or no, what does he say? Lesbian dancing, whatever it is.
Gender theory and dance.
Yeah, I mean, but Tom can speak better. Tom, like, how do you value your degree? Because you actually have one, so I can't speak on the value of having one versus not.
Look, the most valuable part of a degree is the actual piece of paper, right? I think that the education is. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to bash any type of education, but I think that you can get a better education in the real world than you can from a 4-year university.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the best, it almost should be, some people should get more like trade school type of certification to learn an actual skill. And what I mean by that is someone who doesn't, who maybe doesn't have the intellectual capacity to go into politics or become a lawyer, right? But
still have valuable with the trade.
Right. Go into a trade school and learn a good skill and make a living out of it. And then I think the other piece to that is, and Michael and I have talked about this before. It's like a lot of kids graduate high school, go get their education paid for, or get a student loan. But either way, they're not working. They're just kind of partying and getting a degree 4 years later, and then they leave with these liberal arts degrees or these sociology degrees, and they don't know what to do, and so they go move back home and they've never dealt with failure. They've never dealt with like, what do you do when you can't pay your rent, right? And what do you do with these real world problems? So to answer your original question, Mike, I don't think 4-year degrees prepare people for the real world. I think that the real world prepares people for the real world.
Yeah, that's fair. To piggyback off Tom, now it does, like, the value of the degree is infinitely valuable, because Tom knows I've had to work harder to get the same position that other people would get too. But I mean, I feel like at the same time, dude, that's also made me infinitely more valuable than anyone. I've continued to seed peers who have degrees versus not, because, like Tom says, real world, I had to work 2 to 3 times harder, have to be smarter and more valuable than the person who has the degree. But the person with the degree is going to get the first look. So as much as the degree not having one has hurt me, I would say it's equally has helped me as well, though.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Because that was going to be my follow-up question is, I've heard from a lot of people that didn't end up with a degree and still found success, but then there is still that lingering desire to get one, and I wasn't sure if it was from a practical standpoint or sort of just this, like, it's like the more of like the thing that they never did, and it's more of like a
sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. An ethereal sense of accomplishment. I
wouldn't do it to like pat myself on the back, like, oh yeah, I did good for me.
Yeah.
I would do it so I can essentially would be able to get more interviews, right? So If I'm already disqualified without a paper, how qualified would I be with one? Now, to me, the paper, as the value of what it is, I'll learn some stuff, but I feel being in my 30s, I mean, I can't be quite more amazed with stuff that I've already read about and interested in. Yeah. But the value of the paper alone is insignificant. So all it would do is just open more doors, but it doesn't increase my intellect. It doesn't, make me feel more accomplished or anything like that. It's just a tool. It'd be like I'm driving a sports car, but I live in the mountains, so now I get an SUV. That's essentially what the degree would mean to me.
Okay. So Tommy tells me you have interesting incest positions.
Wow. I like how you seamlessly segue right into that. So speaking of degrees, incest.
Well, I know our time is somewhat limited, so I thought we'd just dive right in.
Yeah, okay. So
wait, hold on. Is that what you want to do, Mike, for our last 15 minutes, or should we?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was just gonna kind of let things go from here.
Well, just because I think this might be a good episode too.
Yeah.
Doing the identity politics. I was thinking maybe we wrap this up with like Black Lives Matter.
Oh yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We can do it because the incest thing's going to take 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's like that deserves a separate podcast, I think.
Easily, because I've been combating people with it. It's probably my most liberal view that I'll ever have. Tom laughs at it, but like I actually stumped him. He's the only one that's given me good counter arguments.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, no, that one deserves its own type. That's probably my most liberal views is incest. Our people aren't getting the love they need.
All right, maybe we'll save it. We'll save it for another time then.
Okay, so yeah, but what Tom specifically? What do you want to speak about as far as the Black Lives Matter movement?
Coming from a black man, right? The Black Lives Matter movement is probably your most popular. People call it an equal rights movement. Obviously, there's more controversy behind it. What do you how do you feel about that movement, and do you support it, or what's your thoughts?
So specifically, when the movement first came out, too, right? It's in direct correlation of obviously the officers gunning down unarmed black people on a case by case circumstances. Some of them are super, really egregious things. But I always took it by a case-by-case basis. Like, right. I wouldn't assume the whole department was racist. I wouldn't even assume that officer was racist, actually. I would assume that he was just taught to, no matter what, you come home. So there's some really, really, really bad looks, though. And I was, admittedly, swept up in the propaganda media of it, of like, oh, here's another video, here's another video, here's another video, here's another video. And, so that alone, I guess when the stance started saying it too, I was okay with it, like, with the whole Black Lives Matter, because it wasn't saying Black Lives Matter more originally. They were saying Black Lives Matter too, which was fine. But like I said, I didn't think essentially there was a racist problem. Like I've been pulled over more times than none. I've never felt scared. However, I did during the videos that have influence of like, let me just make sure my hands are always visible, but I should always do that no matter what. Right. So there was like deep influence on it, and I was supporting the movement. I'm like, yeah, maybe. When I stopped supporting it is the day that they rioted, and that was pretty early. Like you can't scream equality and then burn and pillage your own place to the fucking ground. Like you lose all respect for that. Now the kind of argument is like, oh, those are independent factions. You can't have don't have a movement without a strong unification leadership. You know what I mean? Like you need, if you're gonna have, you can't have pocket movements of that too, because that's essentially how terrorism works, right? Is they work independently of each other, so this way no one can hold each other accountable and they can operate independently. But if you want true progress, you need uniship and a leadership. So I mean, do we even know the leader's name and like public face of what he is?
It's like the Black Hitler.
I thought it was like three women, wasn't it?
See, that's the problem right there. We don't even know, who's leading this and stuff like that too. And like, when you riot and then when you defend rioting, that goes back to disenabling. So I was cool with the movement until the riot had happened. I'm like, maybe that's an isolated incident. But then it kept happening, and then even if it was the only isolated incident, a movement should, if you're starting something, you should take full responsibility for it. And I don't see that happen. I don't see any accountability.
Now the rioting was a couple of years ago, and now unfortunately it's become almost this black supremacist movement, where they chant that, murder against the cops and, down with the, beat up random white people in the street just for being white. And it's kind of this now racism on its own.
Well, this has been going on for years, right? Like, do you guys remember, well, we were too young, but the Rodney King riots?
Yeah.
How bad those were too. So like, there's always been there's always for the mob mentality. It doesn't even need a reason, or just needs the smallest reasons of smallest reasons.
Yeah.
To spark something like that too. We've been now. Ironically, though, the ironic part is during the Rodney King riots, like the police racism was heavily influenced at that time too, right? So like there were actual cases of corruption in the LAPD so deep. At this point, the LAPD should be 6 to 7 years. So ironically, that's the only riot that's actually successfully like called for change and reform. And so the problem is when someone does something wrong and they're rewarded for it, it fucks you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Totally. If someone took a shit on your yard and then got viewed and got YouTube videos of 50,000 views or whatever, and then he got sponsored. You know what? That's essentially what it is. It's rewarding the wrong behavior.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when the right happened, it was rewarded.
Yeah. Well,
that makes sense too.
And then I look at like the Rodney King riot, and that one is like, oh my God, you know, a little more. You can see the reasoning behind it a little more. If you watch the Rodney King video, it's absolutely horrible. And,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
it's really brutal.
Yeah.
But
so I think you're right, but I think you're right in saying that you have to evaluate things on a case-by-case basis, and that every single interaction with police officer is on a spectrum. Either the person was shot and it was 100% justified that they putting other people's lives at risk or putting the cops' lives at risk. And then the other side of the spectrum, which I think is a lot rarer than most people think, is that a cop kills a man out of pure hatred and racism, which I don't think actually happens very often.
No, I would say more killings happen more because the cop's scared or nervous.
Yeah.
Than anything else, right? So if you really want to attack it, then like if you want to say there's a problem with that, like then we can have an argument. If you're saying cops aren't adequately trained, other places trained for 3-5 years, and like I think it's specifically, I think it's Finland. They have 4 years of training, like a university, and they're required to pass in psychology as well. And they're also taught to shooting as a last means, not a first means. So
in Finland,
but I can't, Switzerland, Finland, somewhere else too. They have specifically essentially where training that way specifically, and I can't remember where it is. It might be Germany. Somewhere has really good law enforcement, and that's the strictly view is the police are treated like an elite force. It's essentially a university.
Yeah.
So if you want to make that argument that maybe like it's too easy to be a cop or we're not adequately trained, like we can have that argument. That would actually be a fair argument, because I do feel in some instances maybe we do a shoot first when probably wasn't necessary, But if you're saying that like a cop specifically went in to like kill black people, I can't buy that. However, I will say there is definitely influence. Let's just say, all right, this is going to really sound super racist to me, so like let the liberals loose. Like I personally have a distaste for Patels, Indians, right? Because they are, Tom, as you know, notoriously cheap and extremely hard to negotiate with as a culture. But that's just how they're taught to negotiate, always fight for the best price and stuff like that too. So I never had any biases toward them until I got into sales.
Until you got in sales.
Correct. Until I got into sales. So that heavily influenced my view on them. So let's think about this, right? So crime happens in the most places where there's poverty, correct? And unfortunately, poverty is littered is the wrong word. Poverty is mostly a minority issue. Now, there's a lot of white problem too, but inner cities poverty is probably where the deepest, most police happens, right?
Yeah.
So on a day-by-day basis, they're dealing with, even though it's each person's individual, a lot of like essentially minority inmates or minority criminals. And that day after day after day after day after day will influence you on how to react, regardless of how it is or not. It's just human nature. You're just going to, if you keep getting bitten by dogs, you're going to be afraid of dogs. So like I think that might be an influence problem. That's why maybe the training needs to be a little bit longer to maybe help desensitize that, if that makes sense, or am I just rambling?
Yeah, and I think I listened to a while back a Sam Harris podcast, where he talked to this SWAT team officer, where he was working for SWAT, I think for like over 30 years, and talked about how it's people don't really take into account the officer's own sense of danger in these situations, and that if a news article comes out, a headline comes out, it says police officer shoots unarmed man, so that's all the headline says, and then you look at the details, and the unarmed man like tackled the cop and
was reaching for his gun.
Yeah, and that's like the thing.
Too,
yeah, it's like even the slightest provoking the officer in any way and resisting in any way, the moment you do that, you open yourself up to any possibility, because at that point, the officer can't afford to get knocked out with a punch, because if he does, the gun is on the hip, and then anything can happen from there.
Mm-hmm.
So
You're right.
So yeah, when I think we're looking at these problems, and then we haven't even addressed the actual numbers yet of where. If you look at something like this is a theory that where you look at 9/11, like 3,000 people died or so, right? And every year 30,000 people die from car accidents, but
there's no war on car accidents.
yeah. I think Tesla's trying to have a war with their autopilot, but where there's certain problems in the world that affect a very, very, very small amount of people, and yet they influence culture in a disproportionate way. Would you say that that's the case with?
I mean, that's just how we are. I mean, we're just a reaction type base. I mean, we're just fed to care. I mean, it's just like, like we'll have one guy, a soldier, gets killed. Like, oh my God, it's terrible. But like, okay, but like, what about the soldiers that are here that kill themselves every day? Like, like we're fed to what to listen to, like so much that like I don't know if there's doing it just for views. Do you think there's like a different incentive for journalism as there was before?
Absolutely.
Because journalism used to be about just getting the truth out there. And now it's more of a subscription base. Would that be fair to say?
I think you touched on it perfectly when we were talking about university and how social media was influencing me a lot. So I've heard firsthand from, because I was a journalism major, now I have friends actually working in journalism, where it is it's more about the clicks than it is anything now.
Yeah, you don't have to be right. You just have to be first.
Right.
So, like, I mean, like, and like content of like, I mean, what's going to sell more? Like, if I give you two articles, right here, let police shoot unarmed man, or, so the police unfortunately took the lives of a man who was resisting arrest and reached for his gun. Like, what's gonna, like, I'm gonna go over to this. What's this about? What did he do?
And here's what's really important too, right? Is you hit it right in the head, right? You said what sells more, and unfortunately, right, that this is almost why we're doing this podcast. Is I think a lot of people listening, may say, yeah, this all makes perfect sense. It's common sense, right? But it's not as fun as shouting racism. It is not nearly as fun as saying, no, there's some serious racism in the world, and we need to fix it.
Yeah, because then that guy gets to go home, pat himself on the back, look himself in the mirror, straighten his ponytail or his man bun, and said, I went out there and I made a difference. Good for me. Good for me.
and that's why, you said that perception is always more powerful than the truth. And it's almost like, Mike and I are fighting a losing battle here, seeking the truth.
Yeah, but like, I mean, think about it this way, right? Like, literally give you the cliche of like any guy ever, like, oh, like 80, like if I just saved one life, it was worth it. Essentially, like, Tom, you like changed my views a lot and stuff like that. I was already empathetic and center, but like you challenged me to like think of stuff like that too, and therefore I can challenge. So you can do it one person at a time. And I think as we get smarter too, like I feel like this is just a youth thing. And so as like the youth gets into their 30s and 40s, like they'll become more, I don't know, lack of better words, conservative. And that's how it's always been, and that's fine. The problem is that the youth today have more power than they've ever had, and they really influence a lot of decisions. So that's why it's really a problem now versus 40 years ago, because it's always been this way. Realistically, the hippies putting the flowers and the guns in front of the White House,
and now all those hippies are the most anti-socialist people there are.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So like you grow out of it. You start thinking much of like feelings. You actually deal in facts as you get older. Like you can't go off feelings. There's
a quote by Winston Churchill. He says, "If you're young and are not a liberal, then you don't have a heart. And if you're old and are not conservative, then you don't have a brain."
That's correct.
That's like my favorite quote.
That's 100% accurate. So, like, I mean, if realistically, like, this has always been a problem. But like I said, today, like, youth have more influence and power than ever before. And like I said, once you give people power, they don't know what to do with it. they say you want to corrupt a good man, give him power. You want to make a good man evil, give him absolute power. So that has to do with it. So that's really the only realistic is somehow getting the power out of the youth's hands would probably do that, but that would go into dictatorship. So we can't do that either.
The question becomes then the question becomes then what is influencing younger generations today, and where do you think most of this comes from?
If I had to guess, I don't want to say politicians, but it's really easy in certain states. Like, would we agree that most politicians are smart, right? You would say that for the most part, sure. They have to have somewhat intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And then most of them are over 30. So every politician technically should be conservative. Why would they be Democratic otherwise?
Yeah.
Because they can influence the youth.
Because you can get votes that way. You can get votes, influence, money, whatever, stuff like that too. It's easier to, to influence people by having them blame other people rather than themselves. Because I can't believe most politicians actually believe some of these views. There's no way you could. They're too smart. Most of them are always, maybe not all of them, most of them have to be smarter than me, and I can see through these too. So I just think it's, as always, just on influence, on whatever sells.
So in other words, you don't think a Bernie Sanders truly to his core believes in democratic socialism?
But Bernie Sanders is an obsession. I actually do think he believes it in his core what he speaks about. But I don't believe that Hillary, who's a fucking liar, believes some of the things that she's saying. I don't believe, just like I don't believe it was Republicans. You can't, they all can't believe in God, but yet they somehow have that influence all their decisions too. So they're free thinking people. They're just doing whatever appeases to their voters. And that's why truly smart people like Ben Shapiro stays out of politics. He just talks about it.
Yeah. Well, whether it's right or left, these ideas don't just disappear they've hung around because there is some sort of appeal to each side, regardless of whether the politicians are pushing the agenda or not. That's what's interesting to me is it's almost it is a culture war. It's a war of ideas, and that's the only type of war there is. Sometimes it manifests itself in violence, and other times it's through culture and trying to silence people or trying to stop conversation.
Mm-hmm. And to piggyback off that too, the problem is when they attack and stuff like that too, is they view themselves as the good guys, like anyone does. Everyone goes into a war thinking that they're the good guys, right? No one thinks that we're gonna, I want to bring evil across the world. It's not like a 70s cartoon. Everyone always thinks they're the good guys. So when they do these attacks, they don't think of it as destroying. They think of themselves as freedom fighters. I'm fighting for the oppressed. I'm fighting for the right. I'm fighting for my children to have a better way. And they're so brainwashed into thinking that itself is the problem.
You said it perfectly with the, both the left and the right, both have inherently good ideas. No one supports a bad idea. I think they both believe that it's going to be a good thing. But neither of the ideas have anything to do with your identity. It has nothing to do with race or sex or sexual preference. And all those things need to be left out of this because you're right. They only use those things to fuel votes. And that causes all the problems that we're talking about today. So let's go back to discussing the policies, right? Whether they're economic policies, foreign policies, or about education so we can actually make some good change. But it has nothing to do with identity. I think that's an important message to give everybody.
Yeah, attacking or something I disagree with is a person. You know what I mean? I could say something critical and not have it be, I'm shaking you at your core. I agree with you 100% on that.
Right. Yeah. What we were kind of joking about a week ago or so is that more liberal ideas are most of the ideas are sound good if you don't think about them at all. Poor people should have food, and you're yeah. And then that translates to welfare.
But yeah, correct. Yeah. Don't you want people to be able to, that's the best analogy. Poor people should have,
that's good.
Shouldn't people be able to go anywhere without being discriminated? Yeah, they should. Yeah, woo, clap on that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Therefore, let's make a law about it. You know.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think
they could also use whatever bathroom they want now too, which is like, okay, that's weird.
right. So yeah, all right. So yeah, sounds good. That's perfect. Yeah, I think.
I mean, honestly, realistically, just to kind of briefly talk about that is well, let's talk about, like, if you want to do that, just don't put just have one bathroom. I mean, really, realistically, women just use a stall anyway, right? Like, what's the big deal?
I don't think we can have time to go down the transgender train right now.
Yeah, we'll save our next talk with you for incest in bathrooms and transgenders.
Well, perfect. And how Tom thinks all gay people are horrible.
Well,
those were your exact words, Tom.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, really quick wanted to add in
Edit that out, please.
All right, guys. So till next time, then.
Yeah, just really quickly at the end, we just wanted to add in white power. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Tom, remember how you wanted to do fake news? But why don't you do, like, unarmed black guy walking his kid across the street gets killed, and the police officer peed a swastika on him? That would get some clickbait. Like,
You're right. That'll get some clickbait.
Oh my God.
That'd be
All right, so Val, we're actually going to edit this up and make it seem like you're actually a super black supremacist and make you look terrible.
Just editing, just all the things, all my sarcastic stuff. You only take my content with my sarcastic.
Yeah, we're gonna record at a separate time. Our guest today was Valentino. You're about to hear his interview. The man is borderline insane.
Oh, that's funny.
White people are the devil.
All chopped up.
So ugly. No, if you just take my my poker story out of context, then you'll totally think, like, oh yeah, you've got a better hand than me. Just do that story. and no context. You're white, you get an A. You got two parents, you get an A. I get a 2, and that's it. I gotta hope for a full house off the flop. So, that's funny.
All right, that was a good one.
Man. All right, well, let's do this again, boys. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah, thanks, Val.
All right, and yeah, cool. All right, guys, till next time. I'm gonna shower because I stink.
All right, cool. Talk to you later.
Have a good day, man.
Hey, later.